Okay, welcome back. So this is part two. Uh, if you've kept up, we've had a lot of people being killed. So we pretty much should know what's in store for us now. Let's go.
To help him rule, Claudius had some freedmen as advisors, among them Narcissus, his most trusted subordinate, with whom he sought to consolidate the empire. That is, annexing as many Clyde kingdoms as possible, among them Thrace. There, now we can call it Mare Nostrum. And to exploit the fact Caligula had cleared the way of Neptune, Claudius set his eyes on Britannia. As it happens, one of the Briton client tribes Julius Caesar had set up had its king deposed, so Claudius sent 4 legions there to reassert Roman influence. The path cleared, Claudius arrived with war elephants, founding Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester, as the new capital of the province. Among Claudius's legates was a one named Vespasian, whose swift conquest of the western British coast would gain him much fame. Victorious, Claudius personally pardoned one of the defeated Briton tribe leaders, Caradocus, permitting him to live in Rome, where he would become so civilized he questioned why the Romans ever bothered conquering the mud hut from his homeland in the first place. Claudius then had a new son, naming him Britannicus, whom he sired with his third wife Messalina. And man, if you think Julia the Elder was a whore, Messalina was a nymphomaniac through and through. She fucked all men she could manage to hide from Claudius, born high and low. She once personally challenged the greatest prostitute in Rome for getting fucked by the most dicks in one night, and she won effortlessly. But besides being a degenerate adulterer, she was also a cruel hypocrite. For once she saw Claudius was welcoming Caligula's sisters back from exile, she had one of them, Julia Livilla, exiled and later killed for sleeping around with Seneca. Yes, the Seneca. But that still left Agrippina around, together with her son Lucius, a descendant of Antonia Major. Remember her? The other baby Octavia was holding? Yeah, details. But despite her mother's and grandmother's efforts, Agrippina took much more after Livia, from whom she learned all about how a Roman viper should get ahead in life. So to restore her previous status and wealth, she tried to seduce the governor of Hispania, a one named Galba, but she was rejected on the spot. He was blunt like that. Nevertheless, Messalina was getting real jelly at the popularity the Julians had with the people, and since Claudius would never have them disposed of, she came up with her own plan. First, she would wait until Claudius got out of Rome, then she would marry one of her lovers in plain daylight with hundreds of witnesses, and then have Claudius killed and have her husband take over the empire. Somehow. Astounded at her stupidity, Narcissus contacted Claudius, telling him of the whole thing. And while the emperor hesitated to punish her, Narcissus just sent the Praetorian guards to make her kill herself. But Messalina, being a woman, really sucked at suicide, so the guards stabbed her to death. Claudius now had to choose his 4th wife, and given his options, he chose to marry his niece Agrippina, thus reuniting the Julian and Claudian houses. And after endless requests by Agrippina, Claudius disowned his son Britannicus in favor of Lucius, whom, as his new heir, would have his name changed to Nero. I love this part. And to ensure his future ascension, Agrippina had all of Messalina's old allies who might support Britannicus over Nero exiled, even killing Britannicus' tutor after he started to criticize his abandonment. And finally clashing with Narcissus, whom favored Britannicus over Nero, having him exiled to Campania. As his new heir, Claudius had Nero marry his daughter Claudia Octavia, and then recalled Seneca to serve as his tutor. But in time, Claudius began to regret his decision. For his whole life, he had been the target of jokes and manipulation by those around him. But no more. He wouldn't let his wife manipulate him for her own purposes anymore. He would have his biological son be the heir, and there was no... Truly, a disciple of Livia we have here. Agrippina then had Narcissus imprisoned and killed, later introducing her new emperor of a teenager to the Senate. But if what Agrippina intended was to make her son a puppet of her means, then she was beyond delusional. Even as just a 16-year-old, Nero lived up to his Julian bloodline, asserting his will over others. Firstly by scorning his marriage to that flat-chested Claudia, then by openly fucking a freed woman just to show that he could, then simply ignoring everything his mother told him, letting his wise advisors like Seneca do the talking. Left out in the cold, Agrippina sought to betray her own son, and so started shooting for Britannicus to be seen as the rightful heir to Claudius. I'm not making this up. She actually went to Nero one day and outright confessed she had killed Claudius to make him emperor, and threatened to snitch to the Praetorian Guard and make them acclaim Britannicus as the rightful emperor. And so, just to spite her, Nero had Britannicus poisoned in front of his sister Claudia, then banished Agrippina for being such a cunt, but that would prove not to be enough. Nero tried to get Agrippina poisoned 3 times, but she was even more resistant than Mithridates. He once tried to collapse the ceiling on top of her, but she got away just in time. Then he tried sinking the ship she was in, only for her to swim to safety to the nearest island. So Nero, having run out of patience, just had a guard stab her to death. It worked, true, but he would forever be haunted by her angry spirit. But in the big picture, Nero's regime would be tested right away in the first year, with the Parthian king invading Armenia once again and installing his brother as king. To answer this aggression, Nero sent the general Corbulo to the east, whom, thanks to Parthia being overrun by rebels, proceeded to obliterate all enemies he found and retaking Armenia. He then returned to Rome to celebrate a triumph, leaving his armies to his legate Pietus, whom was then defeated and badly humiliated by the Parthians. Analyzing the situation, and frankly not caring much about the Armenian shithole anyway, Nero allowed the Parthians to pick the Armenian king, but first he would be forced to suck the Roman Emperor's cock for approval. Some payback for Pietus.
So, sorry, the air's on, that's why I had the mic muted. So, what? I'm gonna go back. I apologize, but it just kind of hit me. Why would she tell him her plan? That sounds like a completely stupid thing. I'm still, there's so much that I still don't quite understand, but there's too much death for me to comprehend anything else. Sorry.
Back to his private life, Nero finally resolved to divorce the infertile Claudia, later having her killed. He then married one of his mistresses, Poppaea, whom had just divorced his friend Otho, so he made him governor of Lusitania as compensation, so he would fuck off somewhere far away. Poppaea would then bear him a child, but it was a girl, named Claudia no less. Good thing she didn't survive infancy. But as far as ruling the empire went, Nero was of one mind with Claudius and Caligula, so he had the client kingdom of Bosphorus directly annexed into the empire. Later, Paulinus would be elected to govern the province of Britannia, accompanied by his Gallo-Roman disciple, Agricola. So yes, back to that god-forsaken island. Ever since Claudius's invasion,
Okay. So now they're going into England, back to England.
Ever since Claudius's invasion, subsequent governors had extended its borders north, thus subjugating the Iceni, whose deceased king had willed its land to both his daughters and the Emperor Nero. The Romans then came to collect their inheritance, and after seeing just how badly polluted the British gene pool was, the Romans saw as their duty to impregnate as many women as possible with their virile Roman seed, so that future generations wouldn't suffer as much. But denied the privilege was the Iceni queen, Boudica, whom couldn't cope with her daughters getting all the fun. Enraged and beyond jelly, Boudica rallied the local tribes to revolt against the Romans, being elected their warrior queen, and setting off to destroy the civilization the Romans had brought with them. By then, Paulinus was governing the province and conducting a campaign in Wales. But when he received news from the east, he called on one of his legates to join up with him. But the fucker just refused, cowering away from the revolt. Deprived of reinforcements, Paulinus was forced to make do with the overall 10k men he could muster, against the 230k Britons under Boudica. With a rage to rival Dido, Boudica razed every city she got to, including Camuledunum, Verulanium, and Londinium, with Paulinus rescuing as many civilized refugees as he could. As he was pursued north, Paulinus halted the march, sending the refugees ahead, and choosing to die fighting. After withstanding the Briton hordes for hours, Paulinus, the absolute madman, had his men form up into several wedge formations and charging at the Britons, killing tens of thousands of barbarians in a non-stop bloodbath. Even completely surrounded, Paulinus crushed all resistance. Terrified, the Britons began to flee, clogging up in their carriages like the retards they were, and slowly getting themselves all slaughtered. At the end of the day, 80,000 barbarians lay dead at Paulinus' feet, having lost only 400 men.
80,000 men were killed in one day? I mean, I got a hard time believing 80,000 people died in one day. And you only lost 400 men? What were the barbarians fighting them with? Rubber bands? Were they wearing blindfolds at the same time? How do you kill 80,000 people? Hey guys, we're gonna dig a big hole and we're gonna set it on fire, and then we want you guys to just jump in there, just stay in there. That's ridiculous.
And later making Boudica kill herself. After the battle, Paulinus would engage in such a vicious punitive campaign that Nero had to transfer him away from Britannia, leaving Britannia in his disciples' hands. So let's see how Rome's doing right now. And it's burning, badly, everywhere. The Romans tried their best to put out the fires, but after calming it a bit after 6 days, it reignited and burned for another 3. As the flames raged, 2/3 of the Eternal City lay in ruins, countless killed, and many more displaced and homeless. Once Nero heard of this strategy, he diverted most of his own personal fortunes to assist the survivors, but that didn't save him from the slanderous accusations. Once the fires finally calmed down, Nero was left wondering, just who could have started the fire? Who could have killed countless thousands for their own aims? Who could have put the capital of pagan civilization to the torch? Who could have... It was the fucking Christians, wasn't it? Ever since the end of Tiberius' reign, that Eastern cult began spreading like a virus through the empire, dissuading the plebs from the ways of Jupiter and the divine Caesars with their monotheism. Such blasphemy was beyond the pale for Nero. He would do everything in his power to save Rome from the Christ-cuck menace. Starting the first persecution of the Christians, Nero chose to fight fire with fire, having the Christians crucified and then burned alive, using them as torches for his parties at night and as decorative posts for his gladiatorial games by day, throwing even more Christians into the arena, letting them be eaten alive by the lions. During his persecutions, Nero would have St. Peter killed, and instigating such fear in the hearts of his victims, a millennia of butthurt Christ-cuck writers would come up with every possible childish slander they could think up about him. And thus, the first revisionist historians were born. So many Christian parasites Nero would have killed that he would forever be acclaimed as the Antichrist, given the number 666, gotten from the summation of his name when translated to Jewish numbers. And while torturing Christians is fun and all, Nero was far more athletically minded, holding periodic Olympic Games for contests in chariot racing, singing, and acting, winning every single competition, every single time. He was also architecturally gifted.
Geez, I wonder how he won all those contests. If he had, I know they didn't, but he made sure he showed up with the sharpest knife to the competition.
Erecting a giant 120 feet colossus of himself at the heart of Rome. He would proudly stand there overlooking the city, until the... I don't want to talk about it. Such was Nero's skill and dedication to the Olympic Games he held, his wife wouldn't stop berating at him for spending so much time on them. One day, as she wouldn't stop screaming, he kicked her pregnant belly in a fit of anger, killing both her and his unborn child. But even then, she still didn't shut the fuck up. And despite being such a great emperor, Nero, just like every other emperor, would be the target of a conspiracy, masterminded by Gaius Piso. I fucking told you he was trouble. Delusionally seeing himself as a more worthy ruler, Piso started to gather support for a coup with broad support among the Senate, equestrians, and yes, the Praetorian Guard, growing more corrupt by the day. But it would all go down the drain thanks to a freed woman, as she tried to enlist an officer into the plot, but he stayed loyal to the emperor, and then ousted the conspiracy to him, testified by a senator named Nerva. Nero would then have the freed woman tortured, Piso executed, and Seneca, having been an accomplice on the whole thing, was forcefully suicided. His works on Stoicism would still be respected though. By whom? Well, let us say that Nerva is but one of a very distinct group. To calm himself down, Nero
Oh my goodness. I can't keep up with all the deaths and the names. All the names, deaths, it's crazy.
To calm himself down, Nero had a friend of his kill himself so he could marry his wife, but she didn't prove to be enough. So Nero, as a man of patrician taste, he also married one of his twin servants, named Sporus, dressing him in emperor's clothes, putting makeup on him, and best of all, having him castrated. It's not like he would use anything but his boy pussy anyways, he wasn't a faggot. But as they celebrated their honeymoon, Nero received work of trouble brewing in Judea. So okay, what are the Jews up to now? As always, it all came down to shekels, as Nero's high taxation was triggering the Semites to no end, and as they refused to pay up, the Roman governor of the province was forced to break into the Second Temple and take all of the withheld tax revenue. Their great temple desecrated, and above all their shekels taken, the Jews threw a great revolt, slaughtering all Romans they could find and ambushing an entire legion to its death, To deal with the Jews, Nero sent Vespasian east, alongside his eldest son Titus. But the Jews weren't the only ones complaining about taxation, among them being a Gallic governor named Vindex, whom also revolted against Nero. Not for his own sake though, but in the name of Galba, then governor of Hispania Tarraconensis. With such treason in display, Nero sent the legate Verginius to crush Vindex's revolt. His men then proclaimed him the emperor, but Verginius refused, staying loyal to a fault. But such loyalty wasn't shared by Nero's Praetorian Guard, whom proclaimed for Galba and then abandoned him during the night. Left all alone, Nero contemplated suicide, but with his wife by his side, Nero chose to persist. As they fled to Ostia, seeking to exile themselves somewhere far away, the sailors also betrayed him, denying their service. Nero then contemplated his options and chose to flee to a friend's Italian villa. There, they would have them dig up a grave for him, lamenting how the world would be deprived of his majestic artistic talent, crying out the name of his lifelong love, Sporus. It didn't take long until the news of the Senate's betrayal arrived, whom proclaimed him a public enemy. As he heard the cavalry's approach, Nero refused to let his glorious dynasty end in such disgrace. As the soldiers arrived, they found the emperor bleeding to death on the floor. Some Praetorians had remained loyal and tried to drag him out, saving him from death, but Nero dismissed their attempts, whispering, "Too late. This is fidelity." The dynasty is shattered. Nero is dead. With the Senate and the Praetorian Guard, they have sealed the lineage of divine Caesars forever. The last of the Julio-Claudians passes now into history. Nero goes gladly, for he knows his death is not in vain. He takes his place with his great-uncle and his great-uncle's uncle. The early principate has ended. When the next dynasty rises, you shall be its witness. The shape of the future, the fate of the empire. These things, now, belong to me. Ciao, ciao.
Okay. That was a lot. Both videos. One video turned into two. It's just a lot. So much death. So much death. Okay. Wow. Oh. I don't know what to say. It's just so much death. So much death. Oh my goodness. Okay. So like and subscribe. And, I mean, if you like death, apparently. And until next time, have a good day, have a good night. He married a twink and then had him castrated. Okay.